first female governor. After midnight, as Governor Andrew Cuomo stepped down. He left office under fire from a report that showed he sexually harassed 11 women. And the FDA's full approval for Pfizer helped lift stocks Monday. The Nasdaq closed at a record. The Dow rose 215 points. America's listening to Fox News.
Starting August 1st, pandemic unemployment assistance claimants must start searching for work to remain eligible for PUA benefits. 3 work searches a week are required. Work searches include registering on HireGuam.com, meeting with employers, submitting resumes and applications, and attending job fairs. Only a few are exempt from the work search requirement. This includes those working reduced hours, those in training programs, and self-employed individuals. Remember, PUA ends September the 4th. Now is the time. Let's rebuild our workforce. For more information, go to dol.guam.gov.
Democrats in the House hit an impasse just after midnight on the infrastructure bill and broader spending package, so the House will convene Tuesday to try again. The Biden administration's urging the Supreme Court to keep an eviction moratorium in place.
The Biden administration says the Centers for Disease Control has statutory authority to halt evictions to prevent the spread of communicable disease. That argument is made in a filing to the U.S. Supreme Court following an appeal from a group of realtors asking the high court to block that eviction moratorium. Earlier this year, the justices narrowly approved a previous eviction ban, but Justice Brett Kavanaugh wrote it could not be extended beyond a July expiration. The CDC put in place a new moratorium for areas with substantial or high COVID spread days after that July expiration. A lower court last week upheld the moratorium. On Capitol Hill, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
A panel of judges in North Carolina is prepared to allow tens of thousands of convicted felons to register to vote. This would apply to felons who did not serve prison time. One judge says a panel majority would issue an order soon. And President Biden declares a major disaster exists in the state of Tennessee and orders federal aid after flash flooding left at least 22 dead and dozens missing.
Waverly Police Chief Grant Gillespie says there has been progress locating people who are safe, but there are others who are still cause for concern.
We're less than 10 right now that we're truly not sure about the whereabouts of.
The National Weather Service said a record 17 inches of rain fell Saturday, starting floods that ravaged buildings. Humphreys County Sheriff Chris Davis.
Our people need help. We're going to be overwhelmed for the next probably 30 days at least.
Gernal Scott, Fox News.
And I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Hafaday, this is Congressman St. Nicholas. Your congressional office would like to remind you that pandemic unemployment assistance is set to expire on September 6th of this year. We encourage the people of Guam to seek out active employment as much as possible, as jobs continue to remain limited, and we want to prevent hardship for our people at the conclusion of the PUA program. Thank you, and situas mahase.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Chili's is pairing up premium entrees with 2-in-1 entree selections starting at $19.99. Indulge in mouth-watering combos like the sirloin and ribs combo, the ribeye and jalapeno sausage combo, or the savory sirloin and ancho salmon combo. All served with delicious mashed potatoes. Dine in today and enjoy the best of both worlds flavor experience with Chili's 2-in-1 entree selections. Available for a limited time. Chili's on the second floor of the Tumont Sands Plaza. Chili's, savor the moment.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. People will try to do that. They'll try to infringe on the public's, on the people's right to keep and bear arms, but I'm going to keep an eye on them, and I'm going to call them out when I get the chance. Okay, so much for the Second Amendment. We move on to Zemi Ikotny. And the Daily News stays on a consistent path. Here's the editorial for today. We need more organizations like Guam Green Growth. Last week, Guam Green Growth hosted an event to celebrate the beginning of its new community garden in Ikotny. Guam Green Growth is a partnership between government, academia, and private businesses and organizations. It aims to promote sustainability, health and well-being, and self-sufficiency in eradicating hunger and preserving the island, as you were the land. We congratulate Guam Green Growth for achieving tangible results in an area where many efforts never get off the ground. Bringing together government and private partners for a common goal and encouraging people to work together for education and community betterment are ambitious goals. So what did they do? They had a ribbon cutting? Yeah, this is great progress, right? And so in celebrating the community garden, one of many planned across the island in the future, Governor Leon Guerrero noted that we need to start really working hard we need to really start working hard. Let's see.
I'm sorry. I told the governor to stop calling you at this hour.
I know. She should know after 4 o'clock I'm not going to take her calls. We can, I'll turn my phone on silent, but I always forget to turn it back on until I miss about 20 calls. And then I run into people and say, Bob, when you call me, when I call, why don't you ever answer your phone? Oh, okay. Governor Leon Guerrero noted that we need to really start working hard to be much more independent and to rely on our own natural resources, land, air, water, human resources, Wuhan vaccinations. University President Thomas Kreis described the garden as a demonstration of partnership.
And easy on the knees.
Yeah. The partnership for achieving goals is really central to the success of all this. This just starts out, to me, it just starts out wrong. Government, academia, which means the university, private business and organizations. So they agreed that they're going to work together. This is news. It's bad news. It's just like this. Well, we really didn't need the program, but we applied for a federal grant and we got it. So we did it. But we really, we don't need that program. Students from the GCA Trades Academy and G3 Construction Corps helped build the raised garden beds. Eventually, organizers hope to engage the homeless community and share portions of the harvest with people who are most in need. The goals of Guam Green Growth go beyond food and plants. Supporters conduct community beautification projects with volunteers who participate in village cleanups. According to Guam Green Growth website, activities and outreach events incorporate core Chamorro values of respect, cooperation, and treating others with kindness, generosity, and dignity. I still don't know how you treat someone with dignity. Maybe I'll figure that out someday. The G3 framework focuses on healthy, prosperous communities, an educated, capable, and compassionate island, sustainable homes, utilities and transportation, thriving natural resources, and sustainable alliances. Later this year, Guam Green Growth will be opening a circular economy makerspace and innovation hub at Chamorro Village. The project will allow people to gather in an area filled with tools and equipment so they can transform waste materials into useful, usable products. In a time of business closures and rising unemployment, this initiative will give our people an ownership role in the new green economy and in transition to a cleaner, more sustainable Guam, according to the group's website. And then there's an ad here where you can contact this people. You can contact them at the UOG Center for Island Sustainability. This just brings out my skepticism. And then, of course, you know, when we are in a crisis dealing with the Wuhan virus, and the citizenry is up in arms by the latest draconian measure by our governor, we have to put an editorial in the paper that's basically favorable to our governor. The governor favors this Green Island stuff. So, yeah, never mind those people out on Marine Corps Drive protesting. Pay no attention to them. Okay, then we got the police. The Post. Police need training to de-escalate first, so no life is lost. There was something profound and humbling in how Lucia Setic has handled the loss of her husband, Failor Fabian, 49. Fabian was killed by a Guam police officer with a single shot, reportedly because Fabian was seen as a threat during an incident that occurred when the officer drove by the apartment complex where Fabian's family lived along Tun Jose Ferrin Street in Tamuning on June 30. After an investigative team from the Guam office of the Attorney General on Friday informed Setic that the actions of the police officer, who remained unnamed publicly, were justified, Setic had some questions in her mind. But rather than argue or question authorities, knowing the outcome wouldn't change, she opted to keep quiet. When she heard the conclusion of the investigation that no charges will be filed, the widow said she muttered an apology to her now deceased husband, and then she prayed. I just leave everything between him and God and the officer, she said. She did say she hoped the officer was truthful. Setic and her family, immigrants from Chuk, who stayed on Guam for decades, lived modest lives. When the shooting occurred, her husband had just returned home from getting mangoes and fish for his family. She was away at her job, helping to clean a school for a contractor. Investigators said the incident unfolded in a matter of 29 seconds. Attorney General Levin Camacho said they learned there was an argument that spilled out onto Tun Jose Ferrin Street in Tamuning. Camacho characterized it as the officer was caught in the crossfire. The investigation and surveillance footage showed a man was seen holding 2 machetes, charging at the officer's car and motioning to hit the car. But this wasn't Fabian. Fabian is described as a second man, on foot, who was captured on video throwing an item at the car of the unnamed officer. His family said it was a beer can, and we don't know what kind of beer it was. The off-duty officer happened to be driving by, got out of his vehicle, and responded with gunfire. The investigation took into account that the officer fired the lone fatal shot as he feared for the safety of his daughter who was inside his vehicle. Chief Prosecutor Basil O'Malley said during a press conference Friday, one of the things that has to be taken into consideration, from beginning to end, this took 29 seconds. So when the officer steps out of his car, this was in his face, with seconds to respond. He was concerned about his safety and the safety of his 7-year-old daughter who was in the car. So he had seconds to respond to what he viewed was a threat. In the same 29 seconds, the officer had another choice. Perhaps the situation could have been de-escalated. Instead, Fabian's family claimed the officer called out Fabian by saying, according to the family, "Hey, you, get over here." According to the investigation, after the police officer exited his car, he pulled out his duty weapon from the back of his car and fired one shot, hitting Fabian in the lower abdomen. This is the second deadly officer-involved shooting in a span of 8 months. In the previous incident in November 2020, officers riddled a man and a woman with bullets while inside a parked car that had been reported missing. 4 officers fired 45 shots, and 31 of those shots came from one officer. The 4 were not named, and just like the officer in Fabian's death, they are back working for the police department. Peppered with bullets, Xavier Tedtautau died immediately. His wife, Vicky Ann Tedtautau, who sustained 8 gunshot wounds, subsequently died. In the November 2020 case, no criminal charges were filed, just like in the death of Fabian. The actions of the officers in the Tedtautau couple's death were justified, said Guam Police Chief Stephen Ignacio at the time. In the aftermath of the investigation into the shooting deaths of the Tedtautau couple, the Guam AG's office announced it was working with the police department and local law enforcement to establish standard procedures when peace officers use deadly force that results in someone being injured or killed. In the case of the death of Fabian, the Attorney General said officers are ongoing to ensure officers undergo enhanced law enforcement training on the use of force and de-escalation. But it's hard in a situation like this where there are no wins, the AG said. The family has tragically lost a husband and father. The officer is going to have to deal with this, and you put yourself to taking someone else's life and what that's going to do to you for the rest of your life. Even in grief, life for Fabian's family moves on. On Saturday, Setik held a picture of her husband as she headed out to the door to a hospital delivery room to welcome a grandson her husband will never be able to hold. Setik said the new baby will be named in honor of Fabian's memory. How many more shootings will occur before police can get better at handling a crisis so no life will be lost? That's pretty interesting. And it's the kind of thing that it's just not enough to trust law enforcement to deal with officer shootings. I'd like to tell you that I know the answer. It's certainly not the whole George Floyd circus. But I don't know, perhaps a citizens group, something like that.
I have one question in this whole investigation that I found very curious. Did we ever find out the reason why they had released information of a knife they found around that area? Because they never connected it to Fabian.
No.
Or anybody else.
No.
But what was the reason for releasing that so early?
Good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of makes you suspicious, doesn't it?
It was like there was something that was already concluded.
Yeah. So if you look at the facts in one way, yeah, there was this, and nobody ever told us if anybody was drunk. So we've got this guy acting like a wild man, waving 2 machetes around, coming at the car. Well, machete against cars, Judy Guthertz will tell you that the car will survive, right? And then we've got another guy, if you look at the facts in a light most unfavorable to the cop, throws a beer can at the car. Now, you're supposed to be able to use deadly force if you think your own life is in imminent danger or the life of someone else's. We can go outside after the show, Jose. I'll get in my car and you can throw a beer can at it. I won't shoot you. That just doesn't sound like imminent danger to me. His daughter, I'm assuming, is in the car with the windows rolled up. It just doesn't sound very good. I'm not going to rule on it because I don't know exactly. I don't know enough of the facts. But this is the kind of thing that Candid News used to be pretty hot on. Candid News hasn't been quite as vigorous lately here. Okay, let me just take a peek here at Facebook. I see something that's kind of intriguing. James Anthony said, I know. Oh, wait a minute. Ishmael Velez said, let me just examine the whole chain here.
I think they're having a conversation separate from the editorial.
Are they?
I think so.
Okay. Well, James Anthony says, I know. I also know the decapitated motorcycle rider who also died of Wuhan. They came to the conclusion after they found his decapitated head inside his helmet and tested his nose. Okay. Never mind that there was no body attached to the head. That sounds like something either I or Anthony Camacho would say, right? Okay, so let's go to the card. This is what I got on for the card today. I've got governor versus anti-vaxxers. I've got protest versus the governor. I never got to Dr. Gwen versus horses yesterday. And then some holdovers, woke versus Taliban, Bavakwa versus Guam, governor versus Moylan, CRT versus Rittenhouse, etc. So let's start out with the governor versus anti-vaxxers. Patrons can attest that they have received their first Wuhan virus shot in a 2-shot series will be able to dine at restaurants and other establishments, Governor Leon Guerrero announced Monday night. In a video message released Monday, in which he also announced that the island's 145th Wuhan virus death, the governor said she had amended her latest executive order requiring vaccines for patrons and staff of restaurants, bars, gyms, movie theaters, and other gathering places. A vaccination card will not be necessary, and people don't have to get both doses of the vaccine to be able to gather with others. The changes came after days of criticism by senators, the island's business community, at least one member of the Physicians Advisory Committee, and members of the general public. I have always said that we will ultimately triumph over this disease by the actions we take together as a community, the governor said in a video Monday. I have heard you and I am listening, the governor said as she waved a white flag. Yeah. So for patrons of covered establishments, rather than require full vaccination, they must show proof of their first shot or provide a personal attestation that the individual has received at least one shot. This is coming from he said, a single shot of Pfizer Moderna has been shown to be 80% effective against Wuhan, but these studies are still in progress, etc. So the article goes into that, and the article that ran in the Post indicates all of the protests that came up after last Friday when the governor announced this rather draconian measure. So this is the way I look at it. She says that in order to protect the public, everybody should have 2 vaccinations, right? That way you're not spreading the disease. And we know that's not true. We know that you can be vaccinated and spread the disease. We know that you can be vaccinated and you can contract the disease. But that's been pretty much her pitch. Everybody should get vaccinated, and that way we'll combat the spread of the disease. So under her new rule, all a person has to do, well, first of all, you could just lie. Go to your favorite restaurant and say, "Ooh, boy, my arm is really sore. I got the vaccine this afternoon. I didn't know it. Ooh, it really hurt. Will I get a drink on the house?" Or you can present the card that you got that afternoon, and then that'll be okay. Now, it's a real stretch to think that any immunity would arise from one vaccination, 1 day ago or 2 days. It's got to take a while to develop, right?
Yeah, but I hear there's a vaccination test that's happening at the doors. They take a magnet to your arm, and if it sticks, you're vaxxed.
And if you're magnetic, you're vaxxed. Yeah, maybe. Beep beep. Yeah.
Restaurants are empty though.
Yeah. So if we're letting people in with one, that to me suggests that we're only doing this to coerce people to get at least one. It's not about the spread of disease. It's about coercing people to get the vaccination. It's about putting one more reason before the anti-vaxxers why they should get vaccinated. I was just talking with someone this afternoon, and I'm not going to use the word they because it wasn't they, it was she. And she told me that she's more afraid of the vaccine than she is of the disease. And you spend a little time on the internet and you see all of these sad cases that arise because of the vaccine. So I can completely understand that myself. You take the vaccine, and at the end of the month you wake up and you got 6 toes. Or you take the vaccine, and after 30 days, you come in and forget to turn the lights on in the house, and you don't need to because you're glowing in the dark.
You're going to get the Facebook fact checkers knocking on your door, Bob.
Yeah, there they are. All right. Okay. I'll knock that off. Okay. So the governor then, okay, let's take a short break.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his Smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his Smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
So the next item here I'm going to discuss is Dr. Gwen versus horses. The headline here is Chairman of Governor's Physician Advisory Group disagrees with her restrictions on unvaccinated. Yeah. And then the Post ran an article, Gwen, vaccine order needs to be rescinded. So while I'm talking about this, perhaps the territorial veterinarian can call in and explain to us what the rules are on the decapitation of horses. Because you'll remember the last time that Dr. Gwen did this and contradicted what the governor said, we had a caller, or was it a poster? It was a poster, yeah, who said, you know, if this were in New Jersey, the doctor would wake up with a horse on the foot of his bed. All you folks who really liked, what was the name of that show? James,
Godfather.
The Godfather, yeah. All you guys who like that remember that incident from The Godfather. Or no, wait a minute. I'm sorry. It's not The Godfather. It's the movie. Marlon Brando. The Godfather. Yeah. It wasn't a TV. It was the movie. Yeah, where the key phrase was "make him an offer he can't refuse." And the guy woke up with the head of his favorite horse on his foot of his bed. Okay, so this is Chairman of Governor Lou Leon Guerrero's Physician Advisory Group disagrees with the governor's latest executive order imposing certain restrictions on unvaccinated residents. Dr. Hua Wen said vaccination should not be mandated and individuals and companies should be given the choice whether to get vaccinated or not. I'm one of the most outspoken physicians on island pushing for vaccination to protect the people in the island, but one cannot mandate vaccination. I believe everyone has the right to make a choice. He said, and this came up on Patty Arroyo's show, he said the intention of the governor's executive order is good, but it needs to be modified so as not to go so far as forcing people to be vaccinated. According to Dr. Nguyen, the only way to curb the current Wuhan virus surge is to further limit gatherings. He said the 100 limit on governor's executive order is still too much, and he's recommending a smaller unit of 25 people. He added that Wuhan virus testing also has to change, especially the timing of the results. He said the positive cases should be identified on the spot so they can be immediately isolated and contact traced. With the PCR test, Dr. Nguyen said it takes at least 24 hours to find out the results, while the Binax quicker tests, the results can be determined in about 15 minutes. Makes sense to me. So somebody who has the disease can wander around for 24 hours. Meanwhile, PNC sources who do not want to be identified say that some members of the Physician Advisory Group have resigned because of the governor's executive order. Dr. Gwen said the PAG will ask the governor to reconsider her executive order and modify it because the order has become a divisive issue. Now, Dr. Gwen couldn't wait for the reporters. You know, there was a gigantic chat. I think it was started by Adonis Mendiola. Yeah, over the weekend. And Dr. Gwen, I fully support this movement. I believe in the Wuhan virus immunization, but no one can mandate private companies in mandating vaccines on their employees. This EO needs to be rescheduled. That was like Saturday.
This goes along your lines of the governor's rhetoric whenever she talks to us.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, and then we had a story that ran in the Post. Gwen, vaccine order needs to be rescinded. This executive order needs to be rescinded, Gwen posted on social media about new restrictions issued by Governor Leon Guerrero. Although enforcement won't begin until September 6th, the order requires businesses, including restaurants, shopping centers, etc., to mandate staff and patrons 12 and older to show proof they are fully vaccinated. The order also limits social gatherings to 100 vaccinated people and prohibits unvaccinated residents 12 and older from attending gatherings with people who are not members of their household. Governor Leon Guerrero described her order Friday as a restriction of movement for the unvaccinated, which is not the way, if she had said it is to combat the disease, but to restrict, okay, everybody who is not vaccinated, attach the ankle irons to your ankles and attach the other end, one end of the chain to your bedstead because your movement is restricted. To me, it will make people more stubborn, Gwen said, told the Daily Post. Rather than helping, it's going to make people more angry and defeat the purpose of us trying to control this. Residents have protested the order, which went into effect at 8 a.m. today. While he doesn't agree with concerns about the effectiveness or potential harms that some expressed as a reason they won't accept Wuhan virus, Gwen said his patients are free to choose whether to take his medical advice. He said he would stand with protesters and demonstrators. Now, there was a demonstration up by the ITC building on Saturday. That's why I started out with Franks versus the governor, because Senator Frank Blas spoke on a video, and he did not pull any punches. He was right on point. So you got Frank Blas and Adonis Mendiola, who are apparently at the center of some of these protests. I just have to mention parenthetically that Adonis ran for senator a couple of times, and Frank Blas has been rumored as having ambitions towards the first chair. So cynical folks would say, so that's why they're doing this. And my response would be, well, if it is, good on them. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for people who don't wait till the campaign starts to be active in the community, to testify at hearings, to get involved in demonstrations, etc. If I agree with them, fine. I might tend to vote for them. If I don't, I won't. But that's the way politics works. That's how physicians have to look at this. Gwen said, we cannot judge people. We can put everything on the table for them, and they have to make the final decision. And that's the belief that a physician should have, is that the patient always has the last voice. I thought that was my job, Jose. Some businesses already have begun implementing similar policies for employees and customers, but Gwen said government mandates are a step too far. I think immunizations are safe, and that's what we can do to protect our people. But I also believe that with immunization, people have the right to choose. We cannot mandate private companies to have the vaccine. We can only recommend it to private companies. He said it should be up to the individual companies. It cannot be mandated by the government. The whole Physicians Advisory Group and State Surgeon Cell were caught off guard by the governor's announcement of restrictions on Friday. He said, wow, he's really laying it out. Mainly because the group did not recommend vaccine mandates.
He locked his horses up.
I hope so, yeah. We have to curb this surge somehow, but have to do it according to science and data. And we know where it's coming from. The way to curb This is to truly reduce the number of people at gatherings and the testing strategy. Recent clusters have been traced back to bars and large gatherings, according to Gwen. Restaurants and retail stores have proven to be safe environments. You know, I'm going to remember that when I go down to 2 Ray on Saturday morning. You know, all this talk that the left, the woke generation, I'm looking for a safe place. We need to have a safe place.
Restaurants and retail stores.
Yeah. No micro aggressions. Here's a quote. So mandate vaccines across all businesses is kind of harsh and an almost impossible task for public health to monitor. There has to be a lot more thought behind this EO and give people time to make adjustments, to educate businesses, train businesses, and give businesses certain tools. So this is what we used to refer to as the ready, fire, aim approach. Yeah.
It's not always successful.
Not always. You don't always hit what you want to hit. You ordinarily hit something, but it may not be the target. He questioned why the recommendations made by the Guam Hotel and Restaurant Association were not implemented. The recommendation would have given business options if they chose to require customers to show proof of vaccination. And then the next subheading, blindsided like everyone else. Rather than require vaccines, the group advised the governor to limit gatherings to 25 people, regardless of vaccination status, and to shift to rapid result testing. Tests from manufacturers such as Abbott and Costello.
Hey, Abbott.
Can show whether someone has a presumptive case of Wuhan virus in a few minutes. Instead of a day or so it can take for PCR tests used by the government. That's a huge amount of risk that the person will continue to spread the virus, Gwen said. Gwen said he wanted to make it clear to the public that the new restrictions were not recommended by the Physicians Advisory Group. Wow. That group and the state surgeon Shell were both shocked by Friday's announcement, according to Gwen. We put recommendations out there. He said, I don't know. We got blindsided like everyone else. I don't think that current EO will curb the spread. It's going to have a negative impact. Doctors involved in the Physicians Advisory Group often have to cancel or reschedule appointments with patients in order to make time for government meetings, only to be surprised later that recommendations weren't followed. A whole lot of the executive order needs to be revised, according to Gwen, and more thought should be given before moving forward with combating the latest surge of Wuhan virus cases with new policies. I'm pulling my hair out and I'm frustrated, he said. Wow. So if it isn't hard enough to be a barber already, we got the chairman of the Physicians Advisory Group pulling his hair out.
Barbers didn't make that list, though.
People that make decisions, at least not Nancy Pelosi's. Yeah. People that make decisions, I think they should really, really listen to our advice. We have nothing to gain at all except that our main goal is to protect the people. Gwen later added, no person that is doing paperwork can make better decisions than physicians that see Wuhan virus every day. Yeah, where's my blue pencil here? Yeah.
That was a hard-hitting statement.
Absolutely. So neither of the newspapers got it, but congratulations, Dr. Hua Gwen. Yeah.
And condolences on your stable.
Yeah, and condolences on your horse, your stable. And I guess you could fire him from the Physicians Advisory Group, but he would probably see that as something of a blessing. So it's time to stop here and and weigh where we are and what we've got. We've got a doctor who has a physician's advisory group. We have a territorial surgeon, Mike Cruz, who has his own little group. And the governor tells us that her actions are based on science and that she really wants to combat this virus and that she will not hesitate to put restrictions back in place. She put roadblocks out in Marine Corps Drive for no reason that anyone that I've ever talked to could ascertain. I did a FOIA to find out what the traffic through it was, how many cars, how many were stopped, et cetera, et cetera. They didn't even keep records. So they just had National Guardsmen out there telling people how to prevent, wash your hands and all that stuff, right? So then we have a courageous doctor who chairs his group of doctors. Now, if I want to listen to anybody about how to deal with a virus, I'm inclined to listen to a doctor. I'd certainly listen to my doctor before I listen to my lawyer. So this group is there to give the governor advice. And you heard it straight, I was going to say straight from the horse's mouth, but that wouldn't work very well, would it? You heard it straight from the chairman of the group. They were blindsided. They were surprised. This isn't what they recommended. This is a bad idea. So she went ahead and did it, ignoring the advice of these people. And apparently the only thing she responded to was public exposure. I suspect that somebody said, Governor, Dr. Gwen is on Messenger, and he's part of that chain that's going to have a protest on January 30. And this is what he said. And she's thinking, oh, shucks. I can't win an argument with him about the medical aspects of this pandemic. So if he gets good earned media, I'm sunk. Now, I don't know how media savvy he is, but for once, we had some reporters that actually did their jobs. The PNC ran a real news story instead of Dr. Gwen's press release. So we had reporters that did their job and a fearless person who told the truth and really put the governor on the spot. What did the governor do? Monday night. I have a kind of a dry sense of humor. I listen to you. Yeah. Like you always listen to us, Governor. So the point that I want to make here is this. She has rolled it back. So you only got to have one card, or you can go to the front door and you can lie, right? She's let up on the restaurant employees, et cetera. Don't say, okay, well, that's good. That's that. Now we can go back to just doing our thing. No, you can't. You have to keep the pressure on this governor, because as soon as the pressure lets up, she will revert to her usual self. I don't want to use the analogy of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
There's another theme here, though, Bob, that I'm just like picking up on. We had that whole thing with the legislature on Monday, trying to pass something, and then at 9:30, 9:45 at night, she comes out with this half limp mea culpa.
Yeah.
But she also did another thing. She extended the health emergency.
Yeah.
And that's not being talked about.
No. Nobody picked up on that.
And it's not even the end of the month yet.
No. Yeah, good point, Jose. I missed that. Very good point.
She snuck it in.
She snuck it in. She had camouflage to sneak it in because she knew that everybody would do just what I'm doing right now and not talk about extending the health emergency. Yeah. Well, it's time to dust off the Bob and Ray resolution. And even if you don't have the votes over there, even if Mary Torres is going to vote against it, even if you only got 6 Republicans. It's the way senators communicate. Unlike Jim Moylan, who thinks that being a senator is is having a pen pal, senators communicate by means of the bills that they introduce. Well, the Bob and Ray resolution, of course, is a resolution, not a bill, but has the functional equivalency of a bill. So the mere fact that Republican senators are approaching other senators to co-sponsor the Bob and Ray sends a message to the governor. And we see that the governor receives a message if it's properly sent. So if you can't get Mary Torres and one more Democrat to go along with Bill 11, that's your choice. Need to keep the pressure on. Okay, let's take a short break here.
Mezcla, read all about it. Check out Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Tucumán for lunch. Serving up some savory seafood specials such as spicy garlic shrimp, candied salmon, or better yet the local favorite, snapper or shrimp escabeche. Available only during lunch hours. Make sure to come down and try these tasty specials and more. Call 969-2652 for more info or to make a reservation. Located at the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tucumán, Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. A true taste of Guam.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Yeah, so sending a message. Yesterday I read section 48 U.S.C. section 1422 alpha subsection B. This is the Organic Act, and it says that the governor, etc., may be removed from office by a referendum election in which at least 2/3 of the number of persons voting for such official in the last preceding general election at which such official was elected vote in favor of the recall, etc. The referendum election shall be initiated by the legislature of Guam following a 2/3 vote of the members of the legislature in favor of a referendum, or B, a petition for such referendum to the legislature by registered voters equal in number to at least 50% of the whole number of votes cast at the last general election at which such official was elected preceding the filing of the petition. Now, I'm not calling for a recall, but I'm saying if you want to put pressure, start a petition. That is a newsworthy event. I've said before that, you know, when legislators do things like this, they have to be called to task. I use the word punish. That's a little too harsh. But there has to be the real downside to it to keep them from doing the same thing again. And that's what I'm talking about today. You know, she rolled back her executive order because of the public outcry from the chamber, from the GHRA, from all of the stuff on the social media, and from Dr. Wen. And if that pressure subsides, you know, you can look for roadblocks back out on Marine Corps Drive again. That's kind of my take on this whole thing. Okay, I got a phone call here from Martinez who says he wants to talk about the, what was it? The mandate. Go ahead, Martinez.
Martinez.
Go ahead.
You know, and Ray Gibson agrees with me on this. We only had 8 votes. But isn't it true that if you have 8 votes, you can invalidate or veto or get rid of an executive order that the governor made. Is that true?
No.
What is true then if you have 8 votes?
There is a section in, I can't give you the exact number of the section, but it's in Chapter 19 of Title 10 that gives the governor the ability to to call for her emergencies.
Article 4.
Yeah, to call for emergencies, and the executive orders are a function of the emergency. That same section says that the governor can renew it indefinitely at the end of 30-day periods, but it also said that the legislature by 8 votes can terminate the emergency and it cannot be renewed.
Well, so why don't they do the 8 votes and go that route and terminate the emergency?
Well, you listen to Tall Tales, don't you, Martinez?
Yeah, but you just said they can do that, right? So are you trying to say that you can just turn around and do the same executive order? That's where me and Ray Gibson disagree with you. I don't think the statute, nobody's going to write a statute where the statute is meaningless because they can just turn around and do the same thing. I think if the statute's clear, she cannot do the same thing. If the legislature says, has 8 votes and says it's terminated, it's terminated. If she does the same thing or similar, it's terminated.
What is this, pin the tail on Ray Gibson?
No, but I'm just saying I talked to Ray Gibson this morning. He agreed with me. It would be terminated. And I think if all they got is 8 votes, and it's probably all they got, is they should take that route and just terminate it. And she can't do the same thing. No statute is going to be written that way, because that would make the statute meaningless.
No, the statute's not written that way. The statute says if it's terminated, it can't be renewed.
No, right, it cannot be renewed, so she cannot write the same type of executive order that's been terminated or similar to it.
How many times do we have to say the same thing? That's what I said. You said it about 20 times. That's right.
I didn't say it, so that's right. So why don't they go that route? I didn't say it 20 times.
Why don't they go that route? And my question is, have you been listening to Tall Tales?
Yes.
Okay, when that Bob and Ray resolution was first sent to them, Mary Torres and Tello Taitigui were actually angry about it. And they said, they not only had no willingness to do it, well, anyhow.
You don't need the Bob and Ray resolution, because if 8 votes now, you can terminate her executive order.
Goodbye.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Lightning-fast changes in Afghanistan. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. President Biden will likely come under pressure during a call with G7 leaders this morning for him to extend the August 31st evacuation deadline.
The pressure is building on the president to extend that deadline, and not just domestically. Monday, President Biden spoke with UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. The UK needs U.S. military resources on the ground in Afghanistan to keep its operations going, and the UK is just one of several allies that are pushing Biden to extend the deadline. That, however, is a red line for the Taliban. They say the U.S. agreed to that deadline of August the 31st in talks, and they will not allow the U.S. to go back on its word.
Fox's Ryan Chilcote. Widespread chaos punctuated by sporadic violence has gripped Kabul's airport since the Taliban took over the Afghan capital more than 1 week ago, with Western and Afghan forces driving back crowds desperate to leave. Meantime, Russia announcing this morning it's reinforcing its military base in neighboring Tajikistan. It's a history-making day in New York. Kathy Hochul took the oath of office just after midnight to become the state's first female governor. She replaces Governor Andrew Cuomo, who resigned amidst a scandal.
Thank you for the honor of serving as governor of New York.
Cuomo's roughly 16-minute address expressed gratitude for being allowed 15 years in elected offices, but also touched on the sexual harassment controversy he faces that cost his job.
The truth will out in time.
He wished his successor, Kathy Hochul, well, and ended with what had become a signature phrase.
Never forget, always stay New York tough.
Gernal Scott, Fox News.
America's listening to Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Many parts of the Northeast are a big saturated mess after Tropical Storm Henri blew through this weekend.
Henri dumping as much as 8 inches of rain in parts of New Jersey, where the smell of sewage filled the air in Monroe Township. Roseanne Kiernan says 2 feet of water destroyed nearly everything in her home, likely having to toss appliances, tear up walls, carpets, and replace her car.
We had water over our kneecaps, and this is what we're left with. We're left with nothing.
In Massachusetts, more than 115,000 customers were out of power at one point. New York City saw its wettest hour ever recorded between 10 and 11 p.m. Saturday with 1.94 inches of rain.
Fox's Matt Finn. Crews in Tennessee will continue searching today for dozens of people missing from the flash floods there that left at least 22 dead. A Philadelphia police officer's lucky to be alive after a bullet grazed his head last night. It happened as officers responded to a call of a carjacking. COVID claimed 905 more lives in the U.S. yesterday as the Delta variant spreads quickly among the unvaccinated. Health officials hope the FDA's decision to grant the Pfizer vaccine full approval will encourage more people to get the shot. And a Colorado high school coach says he was forced to step down because he's gay.
Inoke Tonga took to Instagram Sunday to reveal that officials at Valor Christian High School in Denver gave him an ultimatum: resign as the boys' junior varsity volleyball coach or denounce being gay. Tonga writing, "I sat in the room being grilled about how being gay is a danger to the school and to the kids." Tonga, who is a practicing Christian, says the school tried to frame it as though he was stepping away for personal matters. Valor Christian confirmed that the school's pastor and athletic director had met with Tonga, but that the coach misrepresented the interaction. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Diving and seeing our coral reef full of life.
I really love hiking the trails.
I really love going to the beach. The sunsets are amazing.
Your island needs you. Help preserve what makes our island home. Stop those who threaten our wildlife, plants, and environment. Install the free Toka app and report poaching, littering, burning, and other environmental crimes. Call 864-TOKA or install the free Toka app today. This public service announcement is brought to you by the Department of Agriculture, UOGC grant, and Choice Broadcasting.
Pastrami is back at Subway. Pepper-crusted beef layered with crispy pickles, mustard, and melted provolone cheese. Nothing comes close to the pleasure of sinking your teeth into that chewy, juicy, well-seasoned pastrami. It's happiness in a sub. Head down to the nearest Subway restaurant and satisfy your craving for the deli perfection that is pastrami. Subway. Eat fresh. Pastrami sub is available to all Subway locations on Guam and Saipan, including NCS for a limited time only.
Okay, so here we are, another big halftime show. Tall Tales. Let me talk a little bit about the Bob and Ray resolution and make sure that there's an understanding of what we're talking about here about terminating the emergency. You can't terminate an executive order with 8 votes. You can't terminate an executive order with 15 votes. You could enact a statute that makes the executive order moot. But as far as the emergencies are concerned, it's at 10 GCA 19405 that the power to do the emergencies is set out. Let me see if I can get it back here. Yeah, and at, let's see, 19405 is the statute that allows the governor to call a state of emergency by an executive order. That's how she does it, with an executive order. Executive orders, unlike most states, the executive order is actually mentioned in our Organic Act. So it's more than just a kind of an ad hoc gap filler. The subsection B of that section talks in terms of an automatic termination. And then subsection C says that by a majority vote, the legislature may terminate the declaration of a state of public health emergency at any time from the date of the original declaration upon a finding that the occurrence of an illness or health condition that caused the emergency does no longer poses a high probability of a large number of deaths, etc., a large number of incidents of serious permanent or long-term disability, and so on. In other words, the legislature has to make a finding. And the last sentence of subsection D says such a termination shall override any renewal by the governor. So it takes a majority vote. Now, there's a little quibbling to be done, I suppose, about a majority vote. If only 13 people are there, is 7 a majority? As a general principle of parliamentary law, when you're talking majority, it's a majority of the members present, a quorum being present. As far as resolutions are concerned, I didn't look it up in the standing rules. There may be a section in the standing rules that would require 8 votes to adopt a resolution. So it would take, let's simplify it, let's say 15 people are there and 8 of them want to vote to terminate the emergency. Well, I suppose it's possible for someone to stand up and make a motion from the floor to terminate the emergency. But in order to be complete, it would have to go through the findings here set out in subsection C. So I suppose this could be stated orally on the floor of the legislature. The legislature is supposed to keep a journal. For the last several years, it's really been a hit and miss thing. So the legislature is supposed to keep a journal. But if the legislature, if 8 members voted to terminate, there would have to be some mechanism to state the findings and to provide a means of communicating that to the governor. Well, the way that the legislature communicates is basically 2 ways, bills and resolutions. So it's theoretically possible for someone to stand up and make a motion on the floor to terminate the current state of emergency and do all of the oral findings, do all of the findings orally, etc. But I don't know why anybody would want to. It would seem that the proper way to do it would be with an executive order. And that's why Ray and I put together the Bob and Ray resolution way, way back. I think probably back around the time of the Marine Corps Drive checkpoints, wasn't it? Yeah, that long ago. And we sent it to the Republicans, and Tello Taitigui was very angry. How dare you put my name on that? No one ever talked to me about this. Mary Torres was about as angry. She didn't have the same objections. Jim Moylan never said anything about it, pro, con, one way or the other. So it has gone nowhere, although it has been in their hands for quite some time. And it does fit within the ambit here of 10 GCA section 19405 subsection C. So 8 votes of the legislature can't terminate an executive order, but that's not what subsection C is talking about. It's terminating the declaration of emergency that section 19405 contemplates. Okay, so now there's an interesting thing that I mentioned here with the recall, and going back to the Bob and Ray resolution, same as with the recall. I mentioned this just before the break. As far as I know, none of the Republicans have done anything with the Bob and Ray resolution, including letting it lay on their desk so others could see it.
Bob, they ran away from it.
They ran away from it, basically, is what they did. Yeah. They ran away from it. So, you know, if they had it on their desks and there is a minority whip, I can't remember who it is. The minority whip could be circulating it to the members of the other party saying, we have this Bob and Ray resolution. Do you want to be a co-sponsor? What's the worst thing that can happen? No, I don't want to be a co-sponsor. But it starts the buzz. It starts the conversation. It's better than just sitting around saying, I think I'm almost there. Maybe learned helplessness isn't so bad after all. You know, it starts a conversation, and it would tend to turn up the pressure a little bit on the governor. So she would not be so anxious to come out with Friday night surprises like she did last Friday. Ray, talking about what Ray said this, what happened Friday night is Governor Leon Guerrero's Afghanistan. It could be the signature event of her administration. And when we get to the election in 2022, it could be a major campaign topic. And the Republicans may want to get a majority in the legislature, although I'm not sure of it. I haven't seen many indications. And the Republicans may want to put a Republican back in Adeloop. Well, you can't wait until these people file their papers to begin the campaign to start on that. You got to start. In fact, you should have already started right now. Anybody that wants to run for the legislature in 2022, you should be doing something right now. And this is a golden opportunity for someone to come forward and show that he has the right stuff to be a senator. I want to throw something else into the mix here that that I've known about for a long time, was reminded of by R. James, and forgot about it, as is my usual custom when people ask me to do things on the air. I'm going to take a look at 19 GCA, section 2109. Now, chapter 19 of, as you were title 19 of GCA, is the title of it is Personal Relations. And here's 2109, Personal Rights. Any person within the jurisdiction of this territory who conducts himself, I guess it only applies to men, in a proper and lawful manner is entitled to the full and equal accommodations, advantages, facilities, and privileges of inns, restaurants, hotels, eating houses, places where alcoholic beverages, ice cream, or soft drinks of any kind are sold for consumption on the premises. Yeah. Barbershops, bathhouses, theaters, public conveyances, and all other places of public accommodation or amusement.
Wait, bathhouses is in there?
Yeah. I'll tell you why in a minute, okay? Subject only to the conditions and limitations established by law and applicable alike to all citizens, residents, and persons. So there's something else here to chew on. You know, do the governor's executive orders, do they come within the ambit of established by law? And then 2110, same violations. Whoever denies any person except for reasons applicable alike to every race or religion the full accommodations, advantages, facilities, and privileges enumerated in Section 2109, et cetera, except for good cause, is liable in damages in an amount not less than $100, which may be recovered in an action at law brought for that purpose. So, you know, arguably, if you're told you can't come in because you don't have the right card, you could sue for $100. Now, when I first stumbled across this, I researched it, and I think that, well, maybe I've never explained this before, but in about 1933 or 1934, some smart Navy lieutenant lawyer said Guam doesn't have a body of civil and criminal law. It's got military orders and a kind of a hodgepodge of different things, maybe some things left over from the Spanish. So he adopted California law to Guam. And I have this vision of him sitting down with a California law book and a sharp pencil, scratching out California and writing in Guam everywhere. But that's what he did. So the laws of Guam in 1950, when civil government began, carry over from naval government, because this had been a naval government law since 1933. The laws of Guam were very similar to California law, so similar that law offices even today have a legal encyclopedia called California Jurisprudence. We're all the way up to like Calgir 3rd or Calgir 4th now. because as the laws are updated, the encyclopedias are. But those old Cal jurors tell you what the law was in 1933. So they're very valuable additions to any lawyer's library. So this statute came from California law, where I understand they still have bathhouses.
I'm sorry, those are the things my ears pick up.
Yeah, exactly. So,
because they had to write California law, are you saying that Anglo law was not familiar here on Guam?
well, and here's a little bit something else that's really esoteric that no one else probably cares about but me. In the United States, we at the time of we adopted the Constitution, English common law was the law of the United States. And a lot of this stuff was decisional law, especially in the area of tort law, etc. So in 1872, some guy named Field said, what we ought to do is take this gigantic body of code of common law and put it in code form. Break it down into section numbers, sections, titles, chapters, whatever, so that we could have kind of a common ground to know what the law is without thumbing through all kinds of cases. That approach was called the field codes. 2 states really got into the field codes. New York to an extent, California really dived into it. So it is Anglo-American law, but it's codified in 1872. Almost everything else, up until 1938, if you were in federal court, the substantive law was supposed to be federal common law, and procedural law was the procedure in a given every state with a state of jurisdiction. And in those days, there was something called common law pleading. It was really, really complicated. So all of this stuff all kind of came together, and that's basically, we're kind of modern then with our respect to the codification of the law. But anyhow, that's how bathhouses snuck in there, Jose. You asked me what time it was, and I told you how to build a big grandfather clock. So something to, I suppose, to chew on a little bit. Section 19 GCA 2109 versus Lou's executive orders. Interesting. Okay, so that pretty much takes us to the ends of the local news.
I love how you laid out the case for why Adelup should be listening to Tall Tales.
Okay.
Just saying. You're doing the work for them.
Exactly. Yeah. So, just before I leave this, it's not clear that if we made everybody get a vaccination tomorrow, well, let me back up a second. Everything that I've read said that this is not going to be like smallpox. It's not going to be like polio. When I still have a scar from smallpox vaccination, which I got, I was so young, I don't even remember getting it. Everybody got a smallpox vaccination back in those days. You look at people who were born in the late 30s and early 40s, they have 4 scars on their arm because that's the way the Japanese did it. Yeah. Even the Japanese vaccinated people for smallpox, and great progress was made until sometime in the early 70s, a declaration was made. We've kept some virus in the lab just for safety's sake. But smallpox is eradicated worldwide. There's no more smallpox. That's not going to happen with COVID. any more than it happened with a common cold. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to learn to live with it. Every year, there will be people who come down with COVID. Some will perhaps die. But we can't dig a hole in the ground, climb in the hole, and then pull the hole in after us because of this virus. So just one more item on this. This is from George F. Smith on LouRockwell.com. Memo to the vaccinated: get off our backs. Regarding the current push to get everyone to take an experimental vaccine, there's only one consideration. Whose decision is it? I'll answer that. It's yours. It's mine. Do as you wish, but don't tell me what to do. But the reality is quite different. Our freedoms are becoming contingent on getting vaccinated, with our inalienable rights swept under the rug. The unvaccinated are being demonized as a threat to the obedient. Some even signed Mark Price's fake petition to arrest and jail the uncompliant adults. Fake. Then there's the option such as this. The unmasked and unvaccinated range from the misinformed and time-constrained to the lazy and selfish to those who are ideologically committed or deep in the grip of conspiracy theories. At the very edge of the spectrum of shame are the self-serving political, media, and activist leaders who feed vaccine information and encourage skepticism, though they should know better. It's really true. Anything that departs from the established narrative is a conspiracy theory. And if it's a conspiracy theory, it can't be a conspiracy fact. And of course, concern for our health and the health of our progeny is selfish in the derogatory sense and lazy. We are to research and to challenge the shifting claims of bureaucrats who exist to serve our well-being. We have been overloaded with social media, seemingly on their own, censoring unwanted information. But as Press Secretary Jen Psaki made clear, we are regularly making sure social media platforms are aware of the latest narratives dangerous to public health that we and many other Americans are seeing. So Jen Psaki is alerting them. So let me give you an example just to illustrate it a little bit. The false narrative that remains active out there about Wuhan virus vaccine causing infertility, which has been disproven time and again. Well, okay, how could it be disproven this early? So Jan, who did this disproving? The same guys who disproved the safety of hydroxychloroquine, the cheap and safe drug that has saved lives? Probably not. They've disappeared, but there are always others willing to lie for a buck. Yuck, yuck, yuck. Don't worry, Jan. You've got the badges and guns, not Mark and Sundar. Where would we be without badges and guns? In today's cultural climate of intimation, disinformation, and censorship, it's necessary to remind people that we are not in the Soviet Union, Nazi Germany, or Maoist China, or any other totalitarian, murderous slave state. In theory, the governments under which we live are restrained by virtue of the U.S. Constitution, especially the Bill of Rights. Our founders knew the state is the greatest threat to their liberty. And without liberty, we are slaves, a condition we seem headed for under cover of alleged safety. Every means possible has been deployed in trying to make us forget our roots in freedom, with our media leading the charge. No politician had the right to impose lockdowns, but they got away with it. The damage done to young people, the least vulnerable to the virus, was far worse than the disease itself. I'll probably read some more of this tomorrow. Okay, let's take a short break here for the seventh inning stretch.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Starting August 1st, pandemic unemployment assistance claimants must start searching for work to remain eligible for PUA benefits. 3 work searches a week are required. Work searches include registering on HireGuam.com, meeting with employers, submitting resumes and applications, and attending job fairs. Only a few are exempt from the work search requirement. This includes those working reduced hours, those in training programs, and self-employed individuals. Remember, PUA ends September the 4th. Now is the time. Let's rebuild our workforce. For more information, go to dol.guam.gov.
Okay, so here we are. I've got a new item on the card here, and that's I can't remember what I meant. DM versus Aperon. And it's a story. It's an article that ran in the Post. Attorney Aperon prays sex abuse plaintiff takes nothing. Now, I'm going to have to explain the use of the word praise. P-R-A-Y-S, praise, at the end of this item. Former Guam Archbishop Aperon has denied a former Father Duenas Memorial School student's allegations that Aperon raped and sexually abused him multiple times in school year 1994-1995 at the then Archbishop's private residence in Agana Heights. Aperon prays that the complaint be dismissed and that the plaintiff take nothing. Aperon's attorney, Jacqueline T. Terlahi, said in court filings. Well, let me just stop right here. We all know that when we go to church, we pray, right? And we pray at home sometimes. And pray in that context means beseeching the Lord to listen to our prayers, for want of a better definition. Well, pray also has a meaning in legal pleadings. So in a legal pleading, the usual pleading is the complaint. And in the complaint, the plaintiff states the court's jurisdiction, lays out an allegation of facts that give rise to a legal claim, and then at the end of the complaint asks for damages. That part of the complaint where the plaintiff asks for damages is called the prayer. Right? It's got nothing to do with praying in church. It's called the prayer. So when you say, yeah, well, that plaintiff has got an interesting case, what did he pray for? What you're really asking is not that he try to invoke divine assistance. You're asking, how much did he ask for? So that's what pray means in this. So I don't know if the headline writer was aware of that and was being a little bit cute. Aperon prays sex abuse plaintiff takes nothing.
I thought you were going to spell it with an E.
Yeah. Yeah, that would work too, wouldn't it? Aperon prays the complaint be dismissed and the plaintiff take nothing. Aperon's attorney, Jacqueline Terlahi, said in court filings, plaintiff has failed to state a claim upon which relief can be granted. Talked a little earlier about common law pleading. When the plaintiff's, when you say that the plaintiff has stated a claim upon which relief can be granted, failed to state a claim upon which relief can be granted, at common law that was called a demurrer. Once in a while I'll use that on the show, demurrer. In other words, even if the facts are as you say they are, you're not entitled to anything. Terlahi said the courts lack subject matter jurisdiction. The court lacks personal jurisdiction over the defendant. Venue is improper. The former archbishop also argued that the plaintiff's case has run out of time and that Public Law 33-187, which allowed the filing of complaints decades after the alleged abuses against minors, is unconstitutional. The Vatican stripped Apparon of his title as archbishop after a tribunal convicted him in 2018 of sexual abuse of minors, and that decision was upheld in 2019 by the Pope. The plaintiff is identified in court documents only by the initials DM. Well, that's where I got the DM from, to protect his privacy. He's represented by Guam attorney Charles McDonald. DM is a Saipan resident. In the early 90s, his parents sent him to Guam for high school. According to DM's first amended complaint, Apparon started molesting and raping him on the first weekend he attended Father Duenas Memorial School. Apparon court's filings comes weeks after the Holy See, also a defendant in DM's lawsuit, said in court filings that it is immune from being sued and wasn't properly served a civil complaint that alleges it should be held responsible for sexual abuse that occurred in Guam in the 90s. The Roman Catholic Archbishop of Agana, the Capuchin Franciscans, and Father Duenas Memorial School are also among defendants. Now, there's a complexity there because the Archdiocese has declared Chapter 11 bankruptcy, so that would have an impact on that part of the suit. DM's lawsuit is just one of many filed against Apparon, including by his own nephew and former altar boys who said Apparon raped and molested them when they were minors. Guam has nearly 300 clergy sex abuse claims, and the Archdiocese of Agana sought bankruptcy protection to help compensate the victims. So, still going on. And as far as I know, it's still newsworthy. So as events unfold, I will bring them up on Tall Tales. Comment if there is something to comment about. Next item on the card is woke versus Taliban. This is, again, this you'll think that I'm reading from Babylon Bee, but I'm not. And this ran in a website called Spectator World. Did, quote, gender studies lose Afghanistan? 20 years of war in Afghanistan are over. What comes next is 20 years or even more of recriminations and blame for why the war ended as it did. Scholars and partisans still argue over the reasons America lost Vietnam. So why should Afghanistan be any different? On the plus side, the debate promises to be more interesting. When it comes to Vietnam, partisans debate rules of engagement, bombing strategies, funding levels, and the Tet Offensive, and the fact that politicians set it up so it would be really impossible, almost impossible, for a military victory. Yeah. You know, well, you know, when you can't interdict the supply chain of the enemy, the so-called Ho Chi Minh Trail, when you're restricted as to what you can bomb in enemy territory, yeah. And then, of course, in 1973, February 1973, at the Paris Peace Conference, the United States agreed to pull out. The Vietnamese army survived for 2 more years. Yeah, even though Congress pulled the plug and said no more military aid to Vietnam shortly after the United States pulled out, after promising the Vietnamese that even though we weren't there, we would still help them out. So, of course, this article doesn't mention that. With Afghanistan, the question could be, quote, did gender studies cause America to suffer its most humiliating defeat ever. And then he goes on and quotes a guy named Cockburn. Cockburn wishes he was joking. Traditionally, nations have waged wars by mustering armies, defeating their enemies in battle, and despoiling their lands and cities. Only after total victory is the process of remaking society feasible, which is what we did in both Germany and Japan, and it worked like a charm. But America and Afghanistan sought a shortcut, and by shortcut is meant something that takes 10 times as long but doesn't look as nasty for TV cameras. America hoped that with enough half-baked social engineering in the half of Afghanistan it controlled, it would eventually be rewarded with victory, and Afghanistan would become the homeland of the Hindu Kush. On Ivy League campuses, students are taught to decry colonialism. But the Ivy League diplomats who sought to remake Afghanistan and Harvard's image were among the most ambitious practitioners of it in the world. So alongside the billions for bombs went hundreds of millions for gender studies in Afghanistan. According to U.S. government reports, $787 million was spent on gender programs in Afghanistan. I told you this is going to sound like Babylon Bee. But that substantially understates the actual total, since gender goals were folded into practically every undertaking America made in the country. A recent report from the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction broke down the difficulties of the project. For starting, in 2 languages, Dari and Pashto, there are no words for gender. Maybe we could adopt those languages in this country. That makes sense, since the distinction between sex and gender was only invented by a sexually abusive child psychiatrist in 1960s. That's Alfred Kinsey, if you don't know.
He's a colonizer.
Yeah. But evidently Americans were caught off guard. Things didn't improve from there. Under U.S. guidance, Afghanistan's 2004 Constitution set a 27% quota for women in the lower house, higher than the actual figure in America, a strategy that sometimes required having women represent provinces they had never actually been to. But it's woke. Remarkably, this experiment in democracy created a government few were willing to fight for, let alone die for. The initiatives piled up one after another. Do-gooders established a, quote, National Masculinity Alliance. So a few hundred Afghan men could talk about their gender roles and examine male attitudes that are harmful to women. Remember, I was at, this is not Babylon Bee. Police facilities included child care facilities for working mothers, as though Afghanistan's medieval culture had the same needs as 1980s Minneapolis. The Army set a goal of 10% female participation, which might make sense in a Marvel movie, but didn't to devout Muslims. Even as America built an Afghan army that ended up collapsing in days, and a police force whose members frequently became highwaymen, it always made sure to execute its gender goals. But all this wasn't just a stupid waste of money. It routinely, actively undermined the nation building that America was supposed to be doing. According to a USAID observer, The gender ideology included in American aid routinely caused rebellions out in the provinces, directly causing the instability America was supposedly fighting. To get Afghanistan's parliament to endorse women's rights measures it wanted, America resorted to bribing them. Soon, bribery became the norm for getting anything done in Parliament. Yeah, so being woke is really good, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing. Okay, I noticed that I got some folks in the green room here. I've got Drive-Through Jack and another Joe. Mandatory vaccination and the Afghan war. So we're going to head for Churchill Downs, and then we'll talk to Drive-Through Jack and another Joe.
Hafaday, this is Congressman St. Nicholas. Your congressional office would like to remind you that pandemic unemployment assistance is set to expire on September 6th of this year. We encourage the people of Guam to seek out active employment as much as possible, as jobs continue to remain limited, and we want to prevent hardship for our people at the conclusion of the PUA program. Thank you, and see to us, Mahase.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
So there we are in Churchill Downs, and R. James has joined us here in the green room. So we got about 12 minutes for Drive-Through Jack, another Joe, and R. James. I did want to comment on, I did want to read one Facebook comment here. This is from Ismail Velez. Ismail says, Bob, President Trump said a couple days ago, everything woke turns to shh. There are two more letters at the end of the sh that I can't say on the air.
What is it? Yes.
Yeah, you got it. Very good. You're quick on your feet today, Jose.
Maybe I'm a little lightheaded.
Jose got a haircut. That's why he's saying he's a little lightheaded, maybe, huh? So let's see. I start out here with Drive-Through Jack. Good afternoon, Jack.
Hey, good afternoon, Bob. How you doing?
Doing great.
Yeah, so, I was looking over at this amended mandate, and the thing still doesn't make any sense to me. Why is it that the unvaccinated are the ones that require testing? I mean, you just got through saying, and it's proven that those who are vaccinated still can catch it, still can spread it. So why are you just testing the unvaccinated, and you're requiring testing for the unvaccinated? The only reason that I could come to my mind is because you want to rig the results. So later on you can say, hey, we tested this from this period to that period, and 100% of those that were tested were all unvaccinated.
Yeah. That's a good point, Jack.
I don't understand.
Well, maybe you do understand, Jack. You're using a figure of speech when maybe you understand all too well.
And the point being is that my son's attending a university, and they want to get the numbers correct, too, because they have read lies, darn lies, and statistics. And guess what? They're testing everybody, regardless if you're vaccinated or not. So why is this administration only testing the unvaccinated? And the point being is that they just want to show, at the end of the day, that the only people and the people that we got to be worried about is the unvaccinated, when it's also the vaccinated, and the vaccinated people are the super spreaders. Number two, I appreciate We need more Joanne Browns. We do. I appreciate the narrative comparing this to segregation. I appreciate them reminding all of us about what Rosa Parks went through. But let me make this really clear. At least Rosa Parks got to get on the bus. Us, the unvaccinated, don't even have that human right to enter a restaurant, to enter a bar.
We're lucky, Jack. Not only do we not get to get on the bus, we're lucky if we're not thrown under it.
And yeah, that's true. And it's really aggravating that people don't realize this. That people really don't realize this. That Rosa Parks had more human rights than the unvaccinated of Guam. That's pretty sad. And then for people to suggest that I would lie on something that could put me in jail or jeopardize an establishment that I like to go to put those people in trouble for lying on a forum, all I have is my word, Bob. I am not a politician. I'm not a Gatsung or a Marley or a Polly or a Duendes. All I have is my word. And now you tell me that, you could get around it by checking yes on the box. If I won't enter a contest to win a car, if I won't enter a contest or the privilege to get a couple of $100, what makes you think that I would? The only thing I have is my word, that I would give that up so I could enjoy something that I have a right to, a constitutional right.
Do you think that anyone will do that, Jack?
The problem is, Bob, is not whether someone would do it or not. The problem is that, they're putting a lot of people's, livelihood in jeopardy if this comes back and the establishment is fined. If the person we don't know what we do. You can't lie in a government forum,
Well, I don't know that there's any forum involved because the way I read it, you come to the front door of the restaurant and somebody says, have you been vaccinated? And you say yes, and you can come in. And that's it. And no, there's no determination of whether or not you're telling the truth or not. And that's why I said the way it looks like it's set up, you could lie. You could get in by lying.
That's the point, Bob. That's all I have is my word.
Well, we're not talking about you, Jack. We're talking about the executive order. And I would feel the same way. I'm not going to lie about that. I just won't go.
That's it. I just won't go. I won't condescend to their level.
But the governor has set it up in such a manner that apparently people who have, and people would rationalize it. Well, I'm really a truthful guy, and my word is my bond. If I shake hands and agree to do something, you can count on me. But she's come up with a rule that's really wrong. Therefore, if I don't tell the truth, it doesn't count. Some people will say that. Jack, the fallacy is in the executive order, not in the character of people who feel that they're, who say, why are you doing that? Because I would never do that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I would also do a Joanne Brown and say, hey man, I'm not participating on this. And I'm not gonna participate on a rigged game.
Okay.
And I'm good at. Well, I used to be good at football, and I play a very good cover 2 defense. But it's pretty useless to play cover 2 when the referee is biased. It's pretty hard when the game is rigged against you.
Jack, let's find out what another Joe's got to say here.
Right, but I hope that your listeners would understand that with this sort of mandate and this vaccine and this unvaccinated and we're not allowed to go into anywhere, Rosa Parks had more rights than us.
I got you. Thank you, Jack.
All right. Have a
Yeah, good afternoon, another Joe.
Wow, powerful statement. So, that's the system of the government. Uncle Bob, you get the right to push back, I think, right? You get the right to speak your mind and stuff. But I called about this Afghanistan.
Say again?
I called about the withdrawal from Afghanistan.
Go ahead.
All right, so, I heard the question posed, what's the difference between this war and Vietnam and the comparisons, and they're saying, well, first of all, Bob, we're not completely out of Afghanistan. That's not I checked. And what they did, they messed up the withdrawal. And I don't know that there were this many American citizens in Vietnam when they were leaving at the last moment. I don't know that there was this much high-tech equipment that was left in the hands of the enemy. I don't know that there was, there's a bunch of things that are completely different. And to my understanding, there was the intention of leaving intelligence in the country after we left. So it hasn't been lost, and if anything, it's ours to lose. What we're concerned about, which rightly so, we're distracted by evacuating people who want to survive, primarily U.S. citizens. Then after that, people who are loyal to U.S. efforts in Afghanistan. Unfortunately, Bob, once there's been, I don't know what you call it, threshold, once the acceptable number of U.S. citizens and everyone assisting the U.S. efforts in Afghanistan, once that has been reached, there is still the option, Bob, of kicking the Taliban's butt and saying, hey, we're going to think about ourselves first. That's pretty much been the theme since Trump. But that doesn't mean we're not still interested, because the whole point of going into Afghanistan was to deal with the terrorists and those who were sheltering terrorists, and those are the people who have come back in control. So those factors are the same with Kebab. We still have an interest not to allow the Taliban to harbor terrorists that will attack the United States and our allies. So at some point in time, I would think
another Joe, we've come to the end of the rainbow. R. James, I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to get you on. If you'll call Monday, I'll put you on first. R. Keith, I saw you there also. We just ran out of time. So call Monday, R. James and R. Keith. We'll put you on then. Thanks again.
The Point is KUSG, Hagatna, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The president under pressure. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. President Biden is likely to face pressure from world leaders this morning during a virtual meeting with the G7. Many of them want him to keep U.S. forces at the Kabul airport past the August 31st deadline. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki.
Security on the ground is risky and volatile, and we are not
naive about that. We are very clear-eyed about that. And that certainly is a factor as the president is considering the August 31st question and the timeline.
The Taliban's called the August 31st deadline a red line in the sand. But National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says the timetable is not what is important.
We will continue to get Afghans at risk out of the country even after U.S. military forces have left.
COVID numbers keep climbing. The U.S. reported nearly 226,000 new cases yesterday, the same day the FDA gave full approval to the Pfizer vaccine. Meantime, Hawaii's Governor David Ige is telling people it's not a good time to travel to the islands and urged visitors and residents to restrict travel. New York has a new governor, and she's the first woman to fill the post. Kathy Hochul assumed the office at the stroke of midnight this morning after Governor Andrew Cuomo left office amid sexual harassment allegations. In his farewell message yesterday, Cuomo said the allegations were political, but thanked New Yorkers for his time in office.
I want you to know from the bottom of my heart that every day I worked my hardest. I gave it my all, and I tried my best to deliver for you.
America's listening.